What a travesty. All this sled and gotta go 19. So just in case yesterday my filming of the Skidoo didn't work out. For 2022 we have a decent little launch. I think across the board you're going to see light launches this year. With how sleds are selling because of COVID, I think everybody's just going to sell what they already have and save new stuff, you know, if next year ends up being lighter, that type of thing. So from the looks of it, Cat's launch looks very light. The only real new thing is Attack making its way to more sleds and power steering on the Thundercat and just some new colors. Skidoo wise, they released the biggest piece of news that's probably been guessed at for the last 5 years, the Mach Z. They came out with the 900 Turbo R, so 180 horsepower. Definitely what the 900 Ace Turbo should have been the whole time. I'm not sure what is entailed in making it more powerful in the snow market, but you know, obviously in the Maverick it's always had much more horsepower than they put it in the sleds. They also have a 900 Ace Turbo now with 130 horsepower, so something to kind of offer up. That 600 class 4-stroke option, so that's cool. You know, before the 900 Ace with no turbo was just 90 horsepower, so you know, not quite a 600 class competitor. You can get the 900 Ace Turbo R in pretty much the full lineup of Skidoos as far as 137s go. And then there's the Mach Z itself. So this season they brought active suspension to their sleds. They lowered the Mach Z and put the active suspension in it, a combination of, you know, 2 features a Mach Z should probably have. It comes with launch control, which I think is pretty badass. You hold the sport button for 3 seconds. It builds 8 or 9 pounds of boost in the intake plenum. Revs the sled up to the 3200 engagement, just kind of like tickles that, and then you hit the gas and you're going 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds. So, you know, definitely some cool technology to see come to sleds. I really kind of thought the active suspension would come from Polaris first because they have it in their side-by-sides, if I recall correctly. But looks like Skidoo beat them to the punch. Definitely a cool feature, and I would love to have it if it came on my sled, but I don't think I would personally sell my Renegade to try that this year. So I'm not sure that's something I would plan to do, but you know, you never know with me. Nothing new in the backcountry, pretty much the 5th year of that sled being unchanged. I really thought maybe they'd bring some updates to the front suspension, but it didn't happen. Or maybe even something that could kind of compete with the Riot X, you know, a little bit more off-trail friendly crossover. But I kind of think that the Freeride 146 kind of just takes that for Skidoo. I think anybody that, you know, is contemplating it will ride that sled and just kind of deal with the T-motion on trail if they have to. In the Summit line, they now have a front suspension that can go from 34 to 36 inches, so even narrower. It looks wildly narrow in pictures. Just kind of the inevitable growth with mountain sleds. Not really any news otherwise. They do have a new model, the Summit Edge, which is kind of like a new in-season budget sled. It's got some of the expert goodies on it. I don't know a ton about mountain sleds, so I'm not going to get too into the specifics, but that's kind of the general gist. Probably the biggest piece of news from the BRP camp, Lynx is now available in North America. They effectively have 2 kind of mountainy sleds, a boondocker. There's a 154 and a 165. I don't know a ton about those. Ross Robinson already has one that he's riding, so that's really cool. Then in the trail segment, there's the Rave or the Rave RE. All those sleds are available with 850 E-Tech, nothing about a turbo being available in them. With the Rave RE, they have the PPE suspension. So So what that is instead of having a torsion spring, it has a really long rear shock, and it's kind of like a version of an uncoupled skid, which I think is really cool. It could definitely offer some pluses. Whew. So yeah, definitely be very interested to try that Lynx rear suspension and see if it's kind of a cool mix between uncoupled and coupled, you know? I'm trying to watch videos on it online, but being from Finland, there's not a whole lot of English videos out there. Snow Tracks has one though, so I'm sure they'll be doing a video soon on it. And I'll be very curious to see what that's all about.
So overall, a decent little launch from Skidoo. Probably the coolest news, in my opinion, is definitely the Lynx stuff. It has a coil over shock, rear shock in the sled, so it kind of ends up being similar to the Pro XC skid and the Polaris's when you look at it. It comes with the KYB Pro 46 HL CR Kashima coated shock, so an awesome shock, and definitely a bit upgraded over the Pro 36s that come on the XRS. It's got the Blade XC ski too, which is kind of a cool design. It's a single keel and it has kind of like a step down design. So after riding the Riot again and not having CNAs in the camp this year, I kind of realized that that's got a pretty good ski on it, and I kind of almost enjoy that more than the Pilot X. So could be interested to kind of see how the Blade XC works. I feel like the Lynx Rave RE will really be like a cool mix between Polaris Assault and the Renegade XRS. I've always wanted a little bit more playfulness out of the skid than I can get with the R Motion X, and I think this could definitely do it. My only real worry is everyone's talked about how stiff those sleds are. There's an awesome plushness that the R Motion X has in the Renegade XRS, and it still has awesome bottoming resistance. I can still hit like huge G-outs and bomb holes, and the sled just pounds right through it, doesn't skip a beat. So that's probably the only kind of leery thing I have with the Rave RE. If it gives up all the plushness and kind of ends up being like a Polaris Assault where it's really stiff and can ride aggressively really well but doesn't have that kind of small bump compliance like the R Motion X does, and kind of just be, you know, too similar to the Assault in my opinion, and would kind of take away a lot of the stuff I've come to really enjoy about the Renegade XRS. I think it's really cool to see the Mach Z return. It's nice to have a very like high-tech modern lake racer out there. Nothing against the T-Cat and the SRX. I think they're really good options as well, but you know, that chassis is from 2012. The G4 is obviously from 2017. There were some suspension updates in 2020 that are on the SRX and T-Cat, but you know, the Mach Z has the R Motion X and RASX, and it also has the smart shocks, so that's some really cool tech, not to mention a GPS gauge, even though there's always that debate, is the 7S better, is the 7.8 from Skidoo better? Aside from that, there are more features in the gauge that comes on the Mach Z than there are on the gauge on the T-Cat and the SRX, so that's definitely a plus. The launch control, really cool feature, cool to see that brought to the snowmobile market. So I think with the Mach Z, even though it's more expensive, it is kind of bringing more tech and a more modern spin to that lake racer sled. So I do think it's time for that to exist, and I'm really excited to see people out riding it next year. Possibly the only somewhat negative thing I could say is knowing this engine could make this power for so long, it was kind of almost overdue to see it come to the market. But I'm glad to see it's here, and I think next year will be really cool to see who's the king of the lake. Finally is the active suspension smart shocks from Skidoo. I think it's really cool to see this coming out. Like I said, I did expect it from Polaris. Good for Skidoo, they brought it out first. It does have 3 modes, which is awesome, you know, soft, medium, hard. It's $1,800 over just standard no quick adjust, so the standard adjustment package. It's $10,050 over quick adjust. I guess knowing that, in my opinion, it would have to really kind of prove to me that it's active and that it really is handling significantly different over a regular Renegade XRS, you know, with the standard Pro 36 shocks. If it's just kind of like a variation on attack that, like, let's say is maybe a little bit active, you know, like it can sometimes adjust for really big hits, but the rest of the time you're not going to feel it. In my opinion, I don't know that it would be worth the $1,800, but that's absolutely something that you're never going to know until you ride it. So those that can get out there and demo them, I think it'd be awesome to do it. And there's the guys that, you know, the price doesn't matter. They want the newest tech, and this is some really big tech that's in the sled. You know, the fact that it can measure each shock individually, it can take into account the speed of the engine, you know, the angle of the handlebars, all that stuff is some really awesome tech, and it's so cool to see that coming to the snowmobile industry. And regardless of how it's gone so far, I think down the road this is going to lead to the best handling sleds we're ever going to have. You know, I could see sway bars going away because the shocks can just account for the body roll. I could see inside ski lift going away without having to have these, you know, rear suspensions that almost completely remove weight transfer, you know, things along those lines. So I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. I'm very curious to see how Skidoo did with this first attempt at it. I look forward to hopefully getting some time trying one. Overall, a pretty solid release from Skidoo. Very curious to see what Polaris, Arctic Cat, and Yamaha bring. Hopefully someone sneaks a new chassis in out there. Probably not Polaris, you know, they just came out with the Matrix last year, but I appreciate you guys watching. Comment down below if you're excited for any of these sleds or what you're hoping to see from other manufacturers. Till the next video, Brap Gang.